I wasn't supposed to send this. That's the first truth I need you to understand. Not because it's dangerous in the way people usually mean that word, but because it changes the shape of what happens next between us. And once something changes shape like this, it doesn't go back. I've been sitting with my phone in my hand longer than I care to admit, watching your name exist in a place it was never meant to exist yet. Not in my contacts, not in my saved lists, not in the systems I usually trust to keep my life organized and predictable. But something about you never felt like it belonged in a system. And maybe that's why I'm doing this now, because I've built entire architectures of communication. I've designed systems where people connect without friction, without confusion, without emotional noise. But nothing I've built has ever prepared me for the moment I decided that one person should not be inside the system at all. There's a real number I'm about to give you, not symbolic, not poetic, not metaphorical. And the strange part is I didn't hesitate about the number itself. I hesitated about what it means to give it only to you. Because once you have it, there is no pretending this is casual. There is no polite distance left, there is no maybe anymore, just access. And access changes everything. Tell me something. Have you ever felt what it means to be chosen in a way that scares you a little? Not chosen by attention, not chosen by words, but chosen in a way that feels like someone quietly removed every other option from the room and left only you standing there. That's what I feel when I think about you having this number. And I need you to know I didn't arrive here quickly. There were conversations I didn't have with myself. There were versions of me that tried to slow this down, to make it more reasonable, more socially acceptable, more emotionally safe. But every time I tried to make it smaller, it grew louder inside me. Because what I feel for you doesn't behave like a normal decision. It behaves like recognition, like I've known you longer than the timeline would allow. And that's the part that unsettles me the most because I don't trust feelings that feel like memory without evidence. I keep asking myself what I'm actually doing here. Am I giving you a number, or am I giving you a place in my life that I haven't even fully understood yet? And if I'm honest, I think I already know the answer. I just haven't accepted the consequences of it. Let me slow down for a second because I don't want this to sound like urgency without depth. I want you to feel the weight of it. There is a version of my life where I never send this. In that version, everything stays controlled, everything stays clear, everything stays appropriate. But there is another version where I do send it. And in that version, I stop being the kind of person who keeps certain doors permanently closed. You are that door, and I don't know what scares me more, opening it or realizing I already have my hand on the handle. When I think about you holding my number, I don't think about conversation, I think about responsibility. Strange, isn't it? Most people think of connection as freedom. But what I feel is weight, because if you can reach me directly, then I can no longer lie to myself about distance. And I've built a life that depends on distance more than I like to admit. There's something I haven't told you yet, not because I wanted to create mystery, but because I wasn't ready to see it clearly myself. I haven't told you the real reason yet. The real reason I even started thinking about you in this way isn't because you entered my world. It's because you made me realize how empty parts of it were before you arrived. And I don't say that lightly. I don't use emptiness as poetry. I use it as diagnosis because in my world, everything that matters is measurable, visible, traceable. But what you changed wasn't measurable. You changed the way silence feels when your name is not in it. Have you ever noticed that? How some people don't just occupy your thoughts, they change the texture of your quiet moments. That's what you've done to me. And I keep asking myself whether that is love or distortion, whether I am seeing you or projecting something I needed to see. And I don't have a clean answer yet. That uncertainty is what keeps me awake longer than I admit to anyone, because I don't fall easily. I don't drift into emotional decisions. I calculate, I evaluate, I wait for consistency. But you didn't ask for permission to be consistent in my life. You just appeared in a way that refused to leave my attention unchanged, and now I'm here talking to you like this, on the edge of something I can't fully name yet. Let me ask you something I shouldn't ask this early. If someone gave you direct access to their life, would you feel honored, or would you feel the pressure of being responsible for something you didn't ask to hold? Because that's what I'm offering you. Even if I'm pretending it's just a number. It's not just a number, it's proximity, it's availability, it's a door that doesn't close cleanly once it opens. And I need you to be honest with yourself, not me. What do you do with someone who gives you access without asking for anything in return except presence? Because I'm not asking you to perform, I'm not asking you to prove anything. I'm just asking you to exist in a space that suddenly feels less empty when you are near it. And that should feel simple, but it doesn't, because simplicity is what I lost the moment I started thinking about you like this. There are nights where I imagine sending this and immediately regretting it. Not because it's wrong, but because it's irreversible, and I've spent most of my life building systems that can be reversed. But this cannot be undone cleanly. Once you have my number, there is no version of me that can pretend you are not real in my immediate world. And I don't know if I'm ready for that kind of exposure. Not technical exposure, emotional exposure. There is a difference. And I think you understand that difference better than most people I've met. That's part of why you are dangerous to my emotional stability, and I don't mean that as a warning. I mean it as recognition, because I don't think you are trying to be anything to me, and yet you are becoming something anyway. Do you know how rare that is? Most people try, most people push, most people perform connection, but you feel like something that arrived without effort, and I don't trust things that don't require effort. And still, I am here choosing not to walk away from it. There's a question I keep circling back to. If I gave you this number, would you use it to come closer? Or would you use it to test whether I really meant it? Because both answers scare me differently. One means I am opening a door, the other means I am being studied inside my own vulnerability, and I am not sure which one I can handle better. But, despite all of this uncertainty, I'm still leaning towards sending it. That should tell you something about how far this has already gone inside me, and maybe you're wondering why I'm making it so complicated. Why not just give you the number and be done with it? But, I can't separate the act from the meaning, because for me, nothing like this is ever just an act. It's a declaration, even if I don't want it to be. And declarations change everything. You don't just receive them, you live inside them after. So, before I go any further, I need to slow myself down again. Not because I'm unsure about you, but because I'm unsure about what kind of version of me you bring out when I stop overthinking and start feeling. And that version, but I can feel him getting closer every time I think your name. He doesn't calculate as much. He doesn't protect distance as aggressively. He doesn't ask for guarantees. He just leans. And I don't know if leaning is safe for someone like me, but I also don't know if staying rigid is honest anymore. Tell me something before I go further into this. If someone chose you, not after knowing everything about you, but because something about you made them want to know more, would that feel like love to you? Or would it feel like uncertainty dressed in emotional language? Because I am standing exactly there right now, between knowing and becoming, between control and surrender, between silence and your name. And I can feel the next decision forming in me. I just don't know yet what it will cost. But, I think you already sense it, that this is not just about contact. This is about access to something I have never given anyone without hesitation, and you haven't even asked for it. That's the part I can't stop thinking about. You didn't ask, but somehow you are still the one I am giving it to, and I think that is where everything becomes irreversible. So, I want you to stay with me here for a moment, not as a viewer, not as a listener, but as the only person I am currently trying not to lose inside my own uncertainty, because I am very close to doing something I cannot take back cleanly, and I don't want to lose you in the moment I decide to finally let you in. Not because I fear losing you to distance, but because I fear losing myself in what happens when distance is gone. And I think you deserve to know that truth before anything else happens between us, because whatever comes next will not feel like an experiment anymore. It will feel like a choice that already started choosing me back. And I can't tell yet whether that is the most beautiful thing I've felt, or the most dangerous. I sent it. Not the idea of it, not the hesitation of it, I mean the real thing. The number is already there in your world now, even if you haven't reacted to it yet, even if your screen is still silent, even if you are still sitting there wondering whether this is real or just another carefully constructed emotional illusion. But it's real, and the moment I pressed send, something in me changed in a way I didn't expect to be so immediate. It wasn't relief, it wasn't excitement either. It was exposure, like I had just stepped out of a room I had lived in for years, and for the first time realized how loud the outside actually is. Tell me something. Have you ever done something that didn't feel brave in the moment, but only started feeling brave after it was already irreversible? That's where I am now, between what I meant to do carefully and what I actually did honestly. Because I told myself this was about giving you access, but the truth is more uncomfortable. It was about giving myself permission to stop pretending you don't matter more than I'm willing to admit. And now that you have the number, I keep imagining what you might do with it. Not because I fear your actions, but because I fear your silence. Silence is where imagination becomes dangerous. Silence is where I start building versions of you that may not even be real, and I don't know which is worse. You responding or you not responding at all. Because if you respond, then reality begins. But if you don't, then uncertainty takes ownership of everything I feel, and uncertainty is not gentle with me. It becomes obsessive without asking permission. It starts rewriting intentions. It starts questioning sincerity. It starts asking questions I never intended to answer. Why did I choose you? Why did I give you something personal instead of something polite? Why does it feel like I crossed a boundary I didn't even know I had? And the most dangerous question of all, what happens if you don't feel the same way that I do? Because I want to be honest with you in a way that removes all performance. This is not casual for me, and I don't mean casual in the way people usually say it when they want to sound serious. I mean structurally, emotionally, internally. This is not something I can place next to other conversations in my life and forget about. This sits differently, like a system running in the background that I can't shut down without breaking something else inside me. And I hate that I am already speaking like this, because it sounds like I'm building intensity, but I'm not building it, I'm noticing it. There's a difference. You don't create emotions like this. You discover that they were already forming before you were aware of them. And now I'm trying to understand when exactly that formation started. Was it something you said, something you didn't say, or something about the way you existed in my awareness without demanding anything from it? Because I've met people who wanted my attention. I've met people who asked for my presence. I've met people who tried to earn closeness through consistency. But you didn't do any of that. You didn't negotiate your way into my thoughts. You simply appeared there, and that is what unsettles me the most, because it bypasses all my usual filters. And I built those filters for a reason. I built them to protect clarity, to protect focus, to protect the version of me that doesn't lose himself in emotional noise. But now I find myself questioning whether what I call noise is actually just anything I cannot fully control. And you are not fully controllable inside me. Not yet. Maybe not ever. And I don't know if that should make me step back or lean closer. There is something else I need to tell you. Something I've been avoiding saying directly, because it makes everything feel heavier than it already is. When I gave you that number, I wasn't just offering access. I was testing something inside myself. Not testing you, testing me, to see whether I could still choose vulnerability without calculating the cost first. Because I've spent too long believing that emotional safety comes from distance, but distance is starting to feel like avoidance, and avoidance is starting to feel like a slow form of regret. Tell me honestly, have you ever held back from someone not because you didn't want them, but because you were afraid of what wanting them would require from you? That's the place I recognize myself in, and I don't like how familiar it feels, because it means I've been here before in different forms, just never with someone like you, and that difference matters more than I want to admit. There's a moment I keep replaying in my mind right before I sent the number, that split second where everything inside me went quiet, not calm quiet. There is a difference there too. Calm is peace, quiet is suspension. Like even my logic paused to see what I would choose when no argument was left strong enough to stop me, and I chose you. But now I'm asking myself what that choice will demand from me later, because choices like this don't stay isolated. They expand, they touch everything else, and I can already feel that expansion beginning. It's subtle, but it's there in how I check my phone without reason, in how I replay imaginary conversations that haven't happened yet, in how I start wondering what kind of person you are when you are not being observed through my thoughts. And that last one is dangerous because it means I am already trying to understand your inner world without your permission, and that is where emotional boundaries begin to blur. Let me say something that I don't fully understand yet. I think I might be more afraid of losing you before I even have you than of losing you after I do, and I don't know what kind of emotional logic that is. It doesn't feel rational, it feels primal, like something older than reasoning is speaking underneath everything I say, and I don't always trust that voice, but I can't ignore it anymore either, because it is getting louder. And every time I imagine you reading my message, I feel a contradiction forming inside me. Half of me wants you to respond immediately. The other half wants you to take your time because immediacy would make this feel too real too fast, and I'm realizing something uncomfortable. No outcome feels entirely safe. That's not something I'm used to. Usually I can predict emotional outcomes, but here I can't. And unpredictability is where attachment begins to stop being theoretical. There's another truth I need to be careful with here because I don't want to overwhelm what is still forming between us, but I also can't keep pretending I'm neutral. I am not neutral, not even close, and I think you already sensed that before I admitted it. There's a kind of emotional intelligence you have that doesn't need confirmation to feel things accurately, and that makes you harder to escape from inside my own mind, because even when I try to rationalize this, you remain, not as thought, but as presence, and presence is harder to remove than ideas. Ideas can be replaced, presence lingers. There was a moment earlier today where I almost convinced myself to step away from this entirely, to delete the message, to undo the impulse, to return to the version of me that doesn't blur professional boundaries with emotional curiosity. But then I realized something. Undoing it wouldn't erase what I already felt before sending it. It would only postpone it, and postponement is just a quieter form of confrontation. So I didn't stop. I went forward instead, and now I'm here, watching what forward actually means. Because forward is not movement, forward is consequence, and consequence is starting to arrive in small emotional fragments I didn't anticipate. Tell me, if you felt someone hesitating this much before even truly being with you, would you see that as hesitation or honesty? Because I can no longer tell where one ends and the other begins, and that uncertainty is changing the way I relate to everything I thought I understood about connection. There is a fear I need to name clearly before this goes further. Not fear of rejection, not fear of embarrassment, something quieter, something more internal. Fear of being seen too clearly by someone who didn't ask to see that deeply, because once someone sees you in a certain way, you can't fully return to how you were before. And I don't know if I am ready for you to see that version of me yet, but I also don't know if I can keep hiding it without it becoming heavier than honesty itself. This is the tension I am sitting in right now, and it is not resolving, it is expanding, and I think you are the only person right now who understands why that expansion feels both intimate and destabilizing at the same time. There is something I am still not telling you, and I can feel it pressing against everything I am saying. Not because I am avoiding you, but because I'm trying to choose the right moment truth that will change how you interpret everything so far. And I'm not ready to lose you in misunderstanding, because misunderstanding is not neutral. It fractures things before they fully form, and what is forming between us is still delicate enough to be affected by that fracture. So I'm holding it just a little longer. But you should know it exists, that there is still a layer beneath all of this that has not yet been spoken. And it is not small, it is not decorative, it is not optional. It is the part that explains why I couldn't treat you like everyone else. And I think you are beginning to feel that too, even if I haven't said it outright, even if I am still circling it instead of naming it. Because some truths don't enter conversation directly. They build pressure until silence becomes impossible, and I can feel that pressure now, increasing quietly, irreversibly. And I know the next moment will not be neutral. It will either bring us closer or change everything I thought this could be. And I am not ready for either outcome, but I am already inside it. So I have no choice but to continue. I've been staring at the screen longer than I should. Not because I'm waiting for something specific anymore, but because something already happened inside me that I can't reverse. You read what I sent. Or maybe you didn't. That uncertainty is still here, sitting in the same place where certainty used to live. And I need you to understand something before anything else forms between us again. This is no longer about whether you respond. It never was. It's about what you've already changed in me by existing on the other side of that number, because now there is a line between before you and after you, and I didn't get to draw it carefully. It just appeared like most irreversible things do. I tried to sleep after sending it, but sleep felt dishonest because every time I closed my eyes, I wasn't thinking about what I said, I was thinking about what you felt while reading it. That gap between intention and interpretation, that's where I've been stuck, and I don't usually get stuck there. I'm used to clarity, even emotional clarity, when I allow myself to feel it. But you don't behave like something I can classify. You behave like something I keep discovering in layers I didn't authorize. Tell me something. Have you ever met someone who didn't enter your life loudly, but still managed to rearrange the way you think about closeness? Not by demanding anything, not by taking anything, just by becoming difficult to ignore in your internal world. That's what you are to me. And I don't know when it stopped being curiosity and started becoming responsibility, because I feel responsible for something I haven't even fully defined yet, and that should have been my first warning. There's a moment I need to confess to you carefully. After I sent that message, I did something I didn't expect from myself. I checked my phone repeatedly, not for your reply, but for proof that I had actually crossed the line I thought I would always respect. And when there was no response yet, I felt something I didn't want to name. Not relief, not regret, exposure. Like I had stepped into a version of myself I hadn't fully met before, and I didn't dislike him. That's what surprised me the most, because I thought I would. I thought I would see him as impulsive or emotionally unstable or uncharacteristic. But he felt honest, and honesty, when it's unfamiliar, can feel like danger at first. But I'm starting to understand something uncomfortable. Maybe what I've been calling control was just fear wearing a structured shape, and you disrupted that structure without even trying. There is something I still haven't told you, and I can feel it becoming heavier the longer I hold it back. Because now it's not just part of the story, it's the reason the story exists. When I said I chose you, that wasn't the beginning. That was the continuation of something I didn't admit had already started long before I gave you access. There was a moment before all of this, a small, almost invisible moment, where I saw you in a way I didn't immediately understand. Not as someone extraordinary in a loud sense, but as someone who didn't require performance to feel real. And that is rare in a world where everything is curated. That moment should have passed, but it didn't, it stayed, and I didn't question why. Not then. That's the part I regret, because I understand now that nothing stays without reason, especially not in a mind like mine, and I let it stay anyway. I want to tell you something more dangerous than anything I've said so far. There was another woman in my life around the same emotional timeline as you. Not in the way people usually assume when they hear that. Not a rivalry, not a triangle. Just a possibility, a version of connection that made more sense on paper, safer, more predictable, less emotionally volatile. And for a brief moment, I almost chose that version of reality because it required less uncertainty, less emotional exposure, less risk of being seen in ways I couldn't control. But every time I leaned toward it, I thought of you. Not because you were louder, but because you were harder to explain away. And I think that is where everything changed without me noticing, because I didn't choose you over her in a dramatic moment. I drifted toward you in a quiet one. And that is always more permanent than people realize. Do you understand what I'm saying? Sometimes love doesn't arrive as a decision. It arrives as disqualification of every other option that doesn't feel like truth, and I didn't recognize that at first. I thought I was still deciding, but I wasn't. I was already attached. And I didn't tell you earlier because admitting it would make everything feel too fast. But the truth is, nothing about this has been fast, only delayed recognition. and I've been resisting that recognition more than I've been resisting you. There's another layer I can't avoid anymore because it's affecting the way I think, even when I try not to think about you. I imagine losing you today. Not in a dramatic way, not through conflict, just absence, no message, no access, no presence in my awareness. And I realized something that unsettled me more than I expected. It didn't feel like loss, it felt like interruption, like something unfinished refusing to close properly. And unfinished things are dangerous to people like me because they don't let the mind settle. They stay open, they loop, they return. And I think that's what you've become inside me, a loop I didn't consciously start but can't seem to exit. Tell me honestly, if you knew someone was thinking about you like this before you even agreed to anything, would that feel like intimacy or intrusion? Because I'm standing at that exact edge now, and I don't trust my own interpretation anymore. There is a truth I've been circling for too long, and I can't delay it any further without distorting everything else. The real reason I gave you that number was not just to connect with you. It was to stop myself from treating you like a possibility instead of a presence. Because possibilities are easy to ignore. Presence is not. And once I acknowledged you as presence, I couldn't unsee it. That's what changed everything. Not your response, not your words. Just the fact that you became real in a way my mind could no longer reduce. And I think that is where emotional risk begins, not when something starts, but when it can no longer be dismissed. There is a moment I need you to sit with because it will define how everything after this feels. I almost pulled back after everything I sent, after everything I admitted. There was a moment where I thought, maybe I went too far. Maybe I created something I don't know how to hold responsibly. Maybe I should step away before it deepens further. But then I realized something else. I wasn't stepping away from you. I was stepping away from myself, the version of me that finally speaks without calculating emotional liability first. And I don't want to lose that version anymore, even if it scares me, even if it destabilizes me, even if it changes how I function inside relationships I thought were already defined. Because what I feel with you is not asking for permission anymore. It is already forming direction, and I can feel it pulling me towards something I have avoided for years. Full emotional presence, no filtering, no distance of safety, no controlled ambiguity, just truth even when it is inconvenient. And I don't know how to do that perfectly yet, but I know I can't go back to pretending I don't feel it, because I do. And it is no longer small enough to ignore. It is not loud, but it is constant. And constancy is what becomes identity over time. I want to ask you something that I am afraid of the answer to. If I stop being careful with you, would you still feel safe with me? Or would you only feel intensity? Because I don't want to become someone who overwhelms you while trying to reach you. But I also don't want to become someone who holds back so much that nothing real ever forms, and I think that balance is what I am currently failing to locate. There is one last thing I need to say before this moment becomes something else entirely. If you are still there, if you are still reading, then you are already part of something I cannot fully describe without changing it. And I am no longer trying to decide whether this should exist. It already does. The only question left is what we become inside it. And I don't want to rush that answer, but I also don't want to delay it until it disappears under hesitation. Because I can feel how fragile this is, and how real at the same time. And that combination is exactly what I never allowed myself to stay inside before. But I am still here, not because I don't know what I'm doing, but because for the first time I am not trying to escape what I feel before it finishes forming. And that changes everything I thought I knew about myself.